Hi. Welcome back. I want to ask you something before we begin. Where are you listening from tonight? Are you in bed, winding down after a long day? Or are you somewhere quiet, letting the world slow around you? Wherever you are, you're part of this journey with me. Tonight, we're imagining something extraordinary. What if humans weren't alone in building civilizations? What if dolphins had coral cities? Elephants planted living forests? Birds filled the skies with language? And even ants built empires underground? In this series, we'll explore a planet where Earth's animals became intelligent too. A shared world of cooperation, conflict, and possibility. So settle in, let your thoughts drift with mine, and let's begin. Chapter 1. The Spark of Intelligence. When we talk about intelligence, we often make the mistake of imagining it as something uniquely human, a crown jewel of evolution that belongs to us alone. But if we pause and look carefully, we realize that intelligence already lives all around us. The spark isn't something that appeared out of nowhere in our species. It is a flame that has flickered in countless others, sometimes quietly, sometimes brightly, but always present. Think of crows, for instance. These birds remember faces, hold grudges, use sticks as tools, and even drop nuts on busy roads just so passing cars will crack them open. Or dolphins, who call each other by individual names and coordinate hunting strategies as if they were practiced generals. Even elephants grieve their dead, showing rituals of mourning, gently caressing bones of relatives long gone. These are not random acts. They are glimpses into the hidden intelligence of Earth's creatures. Now imagine if the same evolutionary pressure that gave humans language, abstract thought, and the ability to plan thousands of years into the future had unfolded differently. Imagine if that spark of intelligence, instead of concentrating in one species, spread out across many. Dolphins, wolves, parrots, ants, octopuses, all of them gifted with the same depth of cognition we claim as our own. How would Earth look today if intelligence was not rare, but common? We can begin by asking, what is intelligence, really? For us, it means the ability to learn, reason, communicate, and imagine things that don't yet exist. It is the mind's way of reaching beyond the present moment. A crow holding a stick is not just reacting to hunger. It is predicting, if I use this, I will get food. That is intelligence in its rawest form. But humans took this spark and pushed it to an extreme. We built tools not just for survival, but for shaping entire worlds. We invented symbols, languages, mathematics. We imagined futures that had never happened, and then turned them into reality. That leap from survival intelligence to creative intelligence is what set us apart. Now imagine dolphins making the same leap. They already have complex social structures, passing knowledge from generation to generation. If their intelligence crossed the same threshold, they might develop underwater cities, shaped not from steel and concrete, but from coral and bioluminescent organisms they've learned to cultivate. Their language, built from whistles and clicks that travel far in water, could evolve into symphonies of meaning, perhaps richer and faster than any human tongue. On land, imagine elephants not just mourning their dead, but writing histories of their herds in symbols carved into the ground. Their memories, already legendary, could become archives of entire civilizations. Wolves, instead of hunting in packs, might negotiate treaties with neighboring packs, forming vast federations of canid nations. Birds, whose eyes perceive ultraviolet light invisible to us, might create art in patterns beyond anything our species could even imagine. And then there are the insects. Ants and bees already live in highly organized societies, building cities and managing agriculture on a small scale. What if their collective intelligence expanded to full awareness? Their hives could become sprawling super civilizations, intricate networks stretching across continents, coordinated by communication systems no human mind could fully grasp. To them, humans might look like chaotic wanderers compared to their perfect order. At first glance, this sounds like science fiction, but from an evolutionary perspective, it isn't so far-fetched. Intelligence is not magic. It is adaptation. It arises when solving problems becomes the key to survival. On Earth, harsh climates, shifting environments, and competition for resources shaped us into thinkers and planners. If those same pressures had fallen differently, intelligence could have blossomed in many branches of the tree of life. Picture Earth 100,000 years ago, under this alternate history. Instead of one species of upright apes gradually spreading across continents, you might have multiple intelligent species rising together. Dolphins mastering oceans, apes mastering forests, birds mastering the skies, ants mastering underground, each claiming their domain, each developing cultures, each changing the planet in their own way. Would humans still rise to dominance? Or would we be just one intelligent species among many, sometimes trading, sometimes fighting, sometimes living in uneasy peace? Would the Earth today be a planet of shared civilizations, perhaps even a federation of species bound by treaties and common laws? Or would it be a fractured world, constantly at war, with predators and prey locked in endless conflict, now not only with claws and teeth, but with strategy, weapons, and philosophy? It is hard for us to imagine, because we have only ever known a world where humans stand alone. But the idea of multiple intelligences changes everything we assume about life, history, and survival. For example, predators and prey might evolve not just physical adaptations, but ethical debates. If gazelles and lions were both intelligent, would lions still hunt? Would gazelles still run? Or would they negotiate ways of sharing food, perhaps cultivating other sources of sustenance? And what about culture? Human art is born from our perception of the world, but animals see and sense differently. Bees see patterns in flowers invisible to us. Dolphins navigate with sonar, creating a mental map of shapes and sound. Birds detect magnetic fields. If they had art, it would not resemble our paintings or songs. It would be alien, beautiful, and beyond our comprehension. In this alternate Earth, intelligence would not be a mirror of our own, but a kaleidoscope of minds, each with unique senses, perspectives, and creations. We might not even recognize some of it as intelligence, because it would not fit our human categories. Just as ants might never understand Shakespeare, we might never understand the poetry of dolphins or the symphonies of bees. But that is the lesson here. Intelligence is not about being human. It is about adaptation, communication, and imagination, in whatever form they take. And if Earth had allowed many species to climb that ladder with us, the planet would not just be a home to animals, it would be a home to civilizations, vast, diverse, and unimaginable. As we close this first thought experiment, remember we are not alone in the spectrum of minds. The spark of intelligence already glows in many creatures. We are simply the ones who carried it furthest. But in another world, a dolphin might be telling this story to its young, or a crow might be perched above, recounting it in the rhythm of wings. This is just the beginning of the question. What if Earth's animals became intelligent too? Chapter 2. Parallel evolution. When we think about evolution, we often picture a single line, a ladder that climbs steadily upward until it reaches us. But evolution doesn't work like that. It's not a ladder, it's a tree branching endlessly, with thousands of possible paths leading to thousands of different outcomes. We just happen to be one of them. Humans are not the inevitable result of evolution, only one experiment that happened to work. If you rewind the clock, the tree could grow in another direction. A dolphin branch, a crow branch, an elephant branch. Now, imagine if evolution hadn't poured so much of its energy into us alone. Imagine if the forces that shaped human intelligence had shaped others in parallel. Instead of one great leap in a single species, there were many leaps across the tree of life. Intelligence would not belong to one lineage, but to several. Think about the Ice Age. The shifting climate put pressure on all creatures to adapt or perish. For humans, that pressure led to bigger brains, more cooperation, and better tools. But dolphins lived through ice ages too, navigating changing seas. Crows endured the same harsh shifts in environment, using their cleverness to survive. What if, in those moments, their adaptations had pushed just a little further? What if survival demanded they develop not only tools, but language, not only problem-solving, but culture? Evolution could have sculpted intelligence in parallel lines. Dolphins, with their immense brains, already show the seeds of it. They recognize themselves in mirrors, a test of self-awareness. They invent new games, pass traditions down generations, even give themselves names. In a parallel evolution world, dolphins might not only have playful cultures, but structured societies, schools of philosophy, carried in clicks and whistles, perhaps even underwater libraries of sound. Crows, with their tool-making and social memory, might rise as engineers of the sky. We could imagine crow civilizations stringing intricate structures between cliffs, weaving together branches and metals scavenged from the earth. They already understand fairness and will punish individuals that cheat their peers. That sense of justice might evolve into laws and councils, not unlike our own. Elephants, with their deep social bonds and long lifespans, could become the great historians of this alternate Earth. With parallel evolution, their legendary memory would grow into written language, not carved on paper, perhaps, but in patterns of stone, sand, or earth. Imagine vast plains inscribed with stories only they could fully read, maps of migration, songs of ancestry etched into the land itself. Parallel evolution would mean the rise of not one civilization, but many. Picture Earth 50,000 years ago. Instead of one human tribe beginning to paint on cave walls, there are dolphins composing sonar symphonies beneath the waves. There are crows designing nests that function as bridges. There are elephants carving memory into the soil, and alongside them, humans, no longer the sole keepers of thought, but one voice in a chorus of intelligent species. But evolution is not simply about creating new abilities. It is about trade-offs. Human intelligence came with costs. Large brains required enormous energy. Social cooperation demanded complex emotions. And our fragile infants needed years of care before they could survive on their own. If dolphins, elephants, or crows had taken that leap with us, they too would have faced sacrifices. Would they give up speed or strength for thought? Would their social bonds grow even tighter, or fracture under the weight of self-awareness? Consider the insects. Ants and bees already live in complex societies where individuals act as part of a collective whole. Their intelligence is distributed, shared across thousands of members. In a parallel evolution scenario, what if their collective intelligence became conscious? Not one mind, but many minds linked together, acting in harmony. To us, this would be incomprehensible. A civilization that thinks not in individuals but in hives. How would we coexist with such beings? Would we recognize their culture or dismiss it because it does not mirror our own? In this alternate Earth, evolution would not have crowned one species with intelligence. It would have scattered it like seeds in the wind, each species adapting thought to its own body, its own environment, its own needs. A dolphin mind shaped by the sea, a crow mind shaped by the wind, an elephant mind shaped by the plains. Now imagine the world that results. Humans would not have spread unchallenged across the globe. As we learn to farm, perhaps elephants learned too, cultivating forests instead of fields. As we built villages, perhaps dolphins built coral cities. As we created stories on cave walls, perhaps crows etched theirs into the sky with elaborate flight patterns. We might have grown side by side, sometimes allies, sometimes rivals. Wars would not be between nations alone, but between species. Treaties would not only be signed by kings and queens, but by matriarch elephants, crow councils, dolphin philosophers. Earth itself would have developed a politics, not of one species, but of many. What would this mean for survival? Humans relied heavily on dominating animals to feed, clothe, and carry us. But if those animals were our equals, history could never have unfolded in the same way. Horses might not have been ridden. They might have ridden alongside us. Cows might not have been slaughtered. They might have negotiated their own role in a shared society. Lions might not have been hunted. They might have been respected as sovereign predators, their rights enshrined in interspecies law. Parallel evolution forces us to see intelligence not as a finish line, but as a spectrum of possibilities. We are one example, but not the only one evolution could have written. Intelligence is not inevitable, but it is also not unique. It is simply a path. And if evolution had drawn more paths, our world would be unrecognizable. In some ways it might be richer. Art would not be defined by one perspective, but by many. Philosophy would not be shaped by one brain, but by dozens of kinds. The concept of truth itself might be stretched and reshaped by different ways of sensing the world. Sonar, ultraviolet vision, magnetic fields. Our Earth could have become a shared experiment in consciousness, a planet where no single species held dominion, but where intelligence flourished like forests, diverse, branching, and alive. As we imagine this parallel evolution, one thing becomes clear: intelligence is fragile, contingent, and dependent on chance. The reason humans stand where we do is not because we were destined to. It is because the dice of evolution rolled in our favor. But in another role, another branch, another world, we might not be alone. And if we weren't alone, the history of Earth would not be a story of human triumph. It would be a story of coexistence, conflict, and cooperation among minds, very different from our own. A world both familiar and alien, where we would not ask, are we alone in the universe, but rather, can we share this planet with others like us? That is the parallel Earth. The Earth that could have been. Chapter 3. The Ocean Minds. When we turn our gaze toward the oceans, we often think of them as silent, alien worlds. But beneath the surface lies a universe of sound, communication, and hidden complexity. In many ways, the ocean already carries some of Earth's most intelligent minds. Dolphins, whales, and octopuses are not just creatures of instinct. They are thinkers, problem solvers, and creators. Now imagine if their intelligence matched our own. Imagine if the ocean was not just a wilderness, but a civilization. Dolphins are the first to come to mind. Even today, their brains rival ours in size relative to their bodies. They have individual names, whistles that serve as identity markers, much like I or you. They coordinate hunts, invent games, and pass traditions from one generation to the next. In our world, this makes them remarkable. In an alternate world, this could make them leaders of ocean societies. If their intelligence crossed the threshold into complex language and culture, dolphins might weave entire philosophies in sound, conversations echoing through the depths. Their cities could form in coral reefs and shallow seas, not built from stone and metal, but cultivated from living organisms. Coral shaped into glowing towers, bioluminescent algae providing light, kelp forests, transformed into gardens. Whales, too, would bring their intelligence into this new world. Their songs already stretch across oceans, haunting and beautiful, carrying information over hundreds of kilometers. Today, scientists believe these songs are cultural, shifting year by year as trends spread among populations. Imagine if those songs were not just patterns of sound, but histories, laws, and art. A single whale song might hold the constitution of an entire clan, passed down for centuries in perfect rhythm. Whale nations could span entire oceans, their voices binding communities across vast distances in ways humans could never match. While we mark our borders with walls and maps, whales would mark theirs with sound, their civilization carried in melodies through water. And then, there are the octopuses, the solitary thinkers of the sea, with arms capable of independent thought. Octopuses already live in a form of distributed intelligence. Each arm can explore, test, and even solve problems on its own, feeding information back to the central brain. In a more intelligent ocean, octopuses could become the scientists and inventors of the underwater world. They would craft tools not from fire and metal, but from shells, rocks, and the chemistry of their environment. Perhaps they would even learn to manipulate light, bending the bioluminescence of the deep to create messages, inventions, or even art forms invisible to our eyes. Their intelligence might be alien to us, shaped not by speech, but by color and texture. Communication for them might not be words, but living patterns, whole sentences flashing across their skin in pulses of shifting color. Now imagine these three ocean minds together: dolphins, whales, and octopuses, each intelligent in its own way. Would they unite? Or would they see one another as rivals? Dolphins, with their fast societies, might form bustling city-states in warm seas. Whales, slow and deliberate, could act as great philosophers and historians, their voices carrying wisdom through the ages. Octopuses, secretive and solitary, might remain reclusive inventors, creating technologies in hidden layers. Together they could form an ocean federation, each species offering its strength: dolphin agility, whale memory, octopus ingenuity. But with intelligence comes conflict. In our history, humans have struggled to share space, even with ourselves. Nations rise and fall. Alliances fracture. Wars break out over land, resources, and power. Would the same happen in the oceans? Dolphins might compete for territory in coral reefs, whales for migratory routes, octopuses for hunting grounds. Yet perhaps, shaped by the vastness of the ocean and the necessity of cooperation, they might find better ways than we did. Their communication systems, faster and more immersive than speech, could allow them to resolve conflicts without the bloodshed that plagues human history. Or perhaps they would clash, their wars invisible to us, fought not with swords but with sound, stealth, and cunning. Now let's imagine how humans fit into this picture. The ocean covers more than 70% of Earth's surface, and for most of history, it was a mystery to us. But if intelligent species ruled the seas, history itself would be rewritten. Our ships, once tools of exploration and trade, might have been challenged by dolphin fleets or whale patrols defending their territories. Perhaps when humans set sail for the first time, we would not have found silence, but ambassadors of ocean nations waiting to greet us or warn us away. Our myths of sea monsters and sirens might not be fantasies at all, but dim memories of encounters with civilizations equal to our own. Technology in such a world would also look very different. Humans relied on fire, something impossible to sustain underwater, but dolphins and whales would never need it. They might develop technologies based on sound and pressure, building structures that respond to resonance. Octopuses might master chemistry, creating materials and reactions in ways we cannot imagine. Their science would not mirror ours, but it would be no less powerful. Where we built machines of iron, they might build machines of living coral, organisms grown to perform tasks like factories. Where we created written alphabets, they might compose libraries of sound, color, or scent. Culture, too, would expand beyond our imagination. Imagine a concert where whales sing across oceans while dolphins add layers of rhythm and octopuses paint the water with living displays of color. Imagine diplomacy between humans and dolphins, negotiations spoken in two languages at once, trying to find common ground across worlds of sound and silence. Imagine schools where human children learn mathematics, while dolphin calves learn sonar symphonies. And then imagine them meeting, sharing, teaching each other. There is something humbling about this vision. We often see ourselves as the rulers of Earth, but in truth, the ocean dwarfs us. We have barely touched its depths. If intelligent species already thrived there, we might be the lesser partners, clumsy land dwellers looking out over a sea ruled by others. Our place in history would not be as conquerors of the planet, but as one civilization among many. But perhaps that is the most important lesson of this thought experiment. Intelligence does not need to look like ours to be real. Dolphins already play games. Whales already create songs. Octopuses already invent solutions. The difference between them and us may not be as great as we think. And if their minds had evolved just a little further, if their civilizations had risen beside ours, the world would be a place of endless dialogue. A planet not of humans and animals, but of many intelligent nations, land and sea alike. The oceans, then, would not be silent. They would be alive with voices, each carrying ideas, hopes, and dreams. A world where the horizon is not the boundary of our civilization, but the meeting point between land minds and ocean minds. And that raises the question, if the seas were full of intelligence, would we have learned humility earlier? Would we have learned to share, to listen, to see ourselves not as masters of Earth, but as partners in its great experiment of life? The ocean, in this alternate history, would be not just water, it would be mind. And we, standing on the shore, would be reminded every day that we are not alone. Chapter 4. The Sky Thinkers. When we look up into the sky, we often imagine freedom. Birds soaring above us seem to move with a grace and ease that we can only envy. But what if the sky itself was not just a stage for instinct and migration, but a realm of intelligence and civilization? What if the thinkers of Earth were not only on land or in the sea, but also in the air? Even now, birds show us glimmers of something extraordinary. Crows and ravens, for example, are among the most intelligent creatures we know. They can solve puzzles, plan for the future, and even hold grudges against humans who wronged them. Some ravens have been observed sliding down snowy rooftops, again and again, simply for fun. Parrots, meanwhile, can mimic our speech, not just copying sounds, but sometimes using words with meaning. These are not mere tricks. They are signals of minds capable of abstraction and imagination. Now imagine if evolution had taken them further, granting them the same leap of intelligence that humans experienced. What would the world look like if the sky had thinkers too? The first thing to realize is that bird intelligence would be shaped by the sky itself. Unlike humans, who are bound to the ground, birds are creatures of flight. Their societies would not build sprawling cities of stone, but aerial networks, structures woven into cliffs, mountains, and treetops. Picture vast cooperative nests that stretch across entire canopies, glimmering with objects collected from the ground, metals, feathers, shells, even shards of glass. To us, they might look chaotic, but to the birds, they would be organized and deliberate, perhaps even works of art. Communication would also take a form beyond our imagination. Birds already have intricate songs, some with regional dialects, that shift from one area to another. In a more intelligent Earth, these songs could evolve into full languages, rich in tone and rhythm, carrying not only meaning but emotion and nuance. The conversation between two intelligent birds might sound to us like music, a symphony of whistles and trills, where each note conveys entire ideas. Perhaps their debates and histories would be sung across the skies, turning the world itself into a living concert hall. With flight comes another gift: perspective. From above, birds see the world as a whole, its shapes, rivers, forests, and mountains laid bare. They would naturally become geographers, mapmakers, and explorers. Their civilizations might be less tied to borders and walls, and more fluid, spanning continents, as their flocks migrate with the seasons. Unlike humans, who divide the land into rigid territories, birds might define their world by flight paths, by the invisible highways of air currents and wind. For them, home would not be a place, but a network, a series of roosts, landmarks, and seasonal gatherings, woven together across the globe. But with intelligence also comes politics. The flocks already operate with coordination, turning in unison, as if guided by one mind. If these movements became conscious, they might evolve into aerial governments, councils formed not on the ground, but in mid-flight. Imagine hundreds of ravens circling in the sky, each adding their voice to a decision, their collective movements forming a visible vote. Leadership could be dynamic, changing with the winds, as different birds guide the flock through different challenges. And then there is culture. Birds already use objects to decorate nests and attract mates. Bowerbirds, for example, create elaborate displays, arranging flowers, berries, and shells with careful symmetry. With greater intelligence, such instincts could blossom into true art. Entire colonies might compete in aerial festivals, building nests that rival cathedrals in beauty, adorned with colors designed to dazzle and inspire. Their art would not be static like paintings, but alive. Songs echoing through valleys, displays of flight painting patterns in the air, colors and shapes arranged in ways no human could replicate. How would humans fit into this world of sky civilizations? Perhaps uneasily. From the beginning, humans have competed with birds for resources, grains, seeds, land. In an Earth where birds were intelligent, those conflicts might have turned into negotiations or even wars. Imagine a harvest where humans arrive to gather crops, only to find intelligent flocks claiming the fields as their own. Would treaties be made? Would fields be shared? Or would battles erupt between land-bound humans and sky-bound nations, fought not with claws but with strategy and cunning? And yet, cooperation is just as likely. Intelligent birds would offer perspectives we could never achieve. Their knowledge of geography, weather, and migration could surpass anything humans could learn alone. They might guide early sailors, warning of storms. They might act as messengers, carrying ideas and trade goods across continents with unmatched speed. They might even influence human architecture, inspiring us to build taller, lighter, more graceful structures. Religion and philosophy, too, would be reshaped. To us, the sky has always symbolized transcendence, the heavens above, the realm of gods and spirits. If intelligent birds ruled the skies, they might be seen as intermediaries, interpreters of the divine. Or perhaps they would reject such roles and form philosophies of their own, rooted in the endless horizon, the cycle of migration, and the perspective of always being above. Their worldview would not be tied to soil and stone, but to clouds, stars, and winds. But intelligence in the sky would also challenge our very definition of civilization. We measure progress by buildings, technologies, and artifacts. Birds might measure it differently, by the complexity of their songs, the elegance of their nests, the fluidity of their movements. Where we strive for permanence, birds might embrace ephemerality. A nest can be rebuilt. A song fades but can be sung again. For them, the sky itself might be the ultimate canvas, always changing, always alive. And imagine if they combined their gifts with technology. Intelligent birds might harness flight in ways we cannot even dream of. They could design aerial gliders, powered not by engines, but by teamwork, carrying flocks together across oceans. They might learn to manipulate air currents, bending them like highways. Or they might blend biology and invention, engineering feathers that glow with bioluminescence, turning the night sky into a canvas of living lights. The coexistence of sky thinkers with humans would transform history. Our wars, our empires, our explorations, all of them would be shadowed by the presence of intelligent birds watching from above. Perhaps when armies marched, flocks would fly overhead, acting as witnesses or interveners. Perhaps when explorers crossed oceans, birds would guide them or drive them back. The world would not be a human story alone, but a story shared with those who saw everything from above. In the end, imagining sky civilizations reminds us of something essential. Intelligence is not bound to the ground. It is not tied to fire, to tools, or even to opposable thumbs. It is the ability to adapt, to imagine, to create. Birds already show us sparks of this. Their songs, their play, their problem solving. They are not so different from us. And if evolution had carried them further, if the skies were filled with thinkers, our Earth would be a place where every horizon sang with meaning. The sky would no longer be empty. It would be alive with voices. And every time we looked upward, we would not only see freedom, we would see civilizations soaring on the wind. Chapter 5. The Insect Architects. If there is one kingdom of life that already feels like it flirts with civilization,
He is the insects.
Chamates, bees, and termites build sprawling colonies that rival our cities in scale, complexity, and coordination. Without blueprints, Without a single leader, they create tunnels, farms, ventilation systems, and even armies. To us, it looks like instinct. To them, it is survival. But what if their collective intelligence took the next step? What if insects became fully self-aware, conscious of their power, deliberate in their creations? Imagine ants not as tiny wanderers, but as architects of vast subterranean nations. Today, some colonies stretch across hundreds of kilometers, billions of individuals acting in synchrony. Now imagine that scale infused with intelligence. An ant civilization might weave tunnels that rival subway systems, chambers the size of cathedrals, air shafts, designed with the precision of engineers. They might cultivate fungi, not just for food, but as carefully managed agriculture, shaping ecosystems underground the way humans shape farmland above. Bees, too, could transform their world. They already navigate using the sun, communicate through dances, and maintain complex hive societies. With heightened intelligence, bees might turn their hives into glowing towers of wax and resin, honeycomb cities, designed not just for storage, but for beauty and meaning. Their dances could evolve into full symbolic languages, three-dimensional maps projected through movement, each step carrying entire conversations. Perhaps bees would become the cartographers of the natural world, charting landscapes and seasons with a precision beyond our own. And then there are termites, often overlooked, yet their mounds are marvels of engineering. Some termite colonies build structures with natural air conditioning, maintaining stable temperatures even in harsh climates. With true intelligence, termites could become master builders, their cities rising not underground but above it. Towers that pierce the sky, spires of soil and stone laced with intricate patterns, perhaps even glowing with bioluminescent fungus they cultivate. To us, they might look like alien metropolises sprouting from the earth. To them, they would be monuments of culture. But insect intelligence would be unlike anything humans have ever known. Unlike dolphins, birds, or elephants, whose societies revolve around individuals, insect societies revolve around collectives. Their intelligence might not be housed in one mind, but in thousands, all connected, all sharing. Imagine a city where every citizen is also part of the same consciousness, a hive mind spread across countless bodies. To us, individuality is sacred. To them, individuality might be meaningless. Their self could be the colony itself, an organism made of millions. This raises strange and unsettling questions. How would such beings see us? Would they find our obsession with individuality primitive, wasteful, even dangerous? To them, we might look fractured, unable to act as one. While we argue and fight, they could act with seamless unity, carrying out plans that stretch across centuries, with every member of the hive working toward the same vision. And yet, insect civilizations might also face limits. Creativity often arises from friction, from difference, from individual minds clashing and combining. A hive mind might be perfectly efficient, but would it be inventive, or would it find ways to simulate individuality within itself, creating roles and voices that echo the diversity humans achieve naturally? Perhaps their societies would cultivate artificial disagreements, stage debates between chosen members, in order to spark new ideas. Now imagine humans encountering these insect nations. For most of history, we have crushed ants underfoot, sprayed bees from hives, burned termite mounds without thought. In a world of intelligent insects, such acts would be impossible. Wars would not be fought between kingdoms of humans, but between kingdoms of humans and empires of insects. Our weapons of fire and steel would clash with swarms that move with mathematical precision, strategies designed by minds spread across millions. Could humans stand against such unity? Or would we learn to ally, to coexist, perhaps even to integrate into their systems? Economics, too, would change. Bees already provide pollination, sustaining much of the food we eat. With full intelligence, they might negotiate for their services, demanding resources, respect, or land in exchange for sustaining our crops. Ants, masters of organization, could control trade routes underground, acting as bankers of resources, keeping surplus and distributing it with fairness or power. Termites, with their monumental construction, might compete with us for the skyline, reshaping landscapes to their own design. Culture in such societies would be beyond our comprehension. Imagine art created not by one mind, but by millions. Patterns etched across landscapes, visible only from the sky, designed not to be seen by individuals, but to reflect the collective itself. Imagine music not as sound, but as vibration. Entire symphonies pulsing through the ground, felt by every member of the hive. Imagine philosophy not about who am I, but about what are we? A civilization whose deepest question is not about the self, but about the collective. Religion might take a similar form. Humans often worship gods imagined in our own image, beings with individuality and will. Insect civilizations might worship the hive itself, seeing divinity not as something external, but as the sum of their unity. To them, God could be the colony, eternal, vast, and composed of countless living parts. Their sacred texts might not be written, but encoded in dances, pheromones, or vibrations. Histories embedded in the very rhythm of their existence. If insects had become intelligent alongside us, the Earth might be dominated not by skyscrapers and highways, but by sprawling colonies stretching across continents, interconnected through underground tunnels and surface towers. Our maps would not be divided by borders of nations, but by the networks of insect hives, beehives, and human cities, sometimes allies, sometimes enemies, sometimes merged. But perhaps the greatest lesson is this: intelligence does not need to look like ours. It does not need two eyes, a voice, and a sense of self. It can be collective, distributed, alien. Ants already show us how organization can rival thought. Bees already show us how cooperation can sustain entire ecosystems. Termites already show us how architecture can emerge from instinct. With one twist of evolution, they might have been our rivals, our neighbors, or even our rulers. In such a world, humans might not ask what makes us special, but instead, how do we fit in? The Earth would be alive not just with life, but with minds. Minds in the sea, minds in the sky, and minds beneath our feet, all shaping the future in ways we can barely imagine. And perhaps in some hidden way, the insects already remind us of the truth, that civilization is not uniquely human. It is a possibility written into life itself, waiting for the right conditions to bloom. Chapter 6. The Predator Philosophers. Predators have always fascinated us. They are hunters, shaped by millions of years to chase, stalk, and strike with precision. To prey animals, they are symbols of fear. To us, they are symbols of power. But what if these predators, lions, wolves, tigers, leopards, carried not only claws and fangs, but also minds like ours? What if their intelligence grew beyond instinct into philosophy, strategy, and culture? The very nature of predators would shape their intelligence differently from ours. Humans began as prey, vulnerable, slow, fragile. We relied on cooperation and tools to survive. Predators, on the other hand, already possess strength, speed, and deadly weapons. If their intelligence grew, it would not be driven by the same desperation that drove us. Instead, it would be guided by dominance, by mastery of the hunt, by reflections on life and death. Imagine a world where wolves, with their already complex pack dynamics, rose into conscious societies. A wolf pack today is a tight-knit unit, bound by cooperation and loyalty, where each member plays a role in survival. With higher intelligence, those packs might evolve into clans, each with its own traditions, councils, and laws. They could form federations of packs, negotiating territories not through endless conflict, but through treaties and diplomacy. Their very language might be built from howls, layered with meaning, some carrying warnings, others offering agreements, others weaving stories of ancestry beneath the moon. Now consider lions. Already the rulers of the savannah, they live in prides that balance cooperation with hierarchy. If their minds expanded, lion societies might become monarchies of thought as well as strength. Kings and queens of prides might evolve into true rulers, overseeing vast territories where not only lions but other creatures acknowledge their sovereignty. Their philosophies might reflect their nature, meditations on power, duty, and the cycle of predation. Imagine lion philosophers debating the ethics of hunting prey that thinks and feels, struggling with questions of survival versus morality, power versus compassion. Big cats like tigers and leopards, more solitary than wolves or lions, might develop entirely different cultures. Their intelligence could lead them toward individual philosophies, meditations on solitude, territory, and the self. They might not build cities or empires, but instead create spiritual traditions, philosophies of independence and balance. A tiger sage could be imagined sitting beneath a tree, reflecting on the patterns of the forest, its wisdom written not in books, but in the paths it walks, the silence it keeps. With predators as thinkers, the food chain itself would transform. Prey animals, deer, antelope, zebras, if intelligent too, would no longer be simple targets. They would become nations of their own, negotiating survival. Predators might then face ethical dilemmas, unlike any in our world. Do they continue to hunt intelligent prey, or do they find new ways to sustain themselves? Perhaps predator societies would turn to managed ecosystems, treating hunting not as random survival, but as ritual, symbolic acts performed within strict laws. Or perhaps they would discover alternatives to killing, cultivating food as humans eventually did, reshaping their own instincts for the sake of civilization. Predator intelligence would also bring strategy into entirely new dimensions. Imagine wars between wolf clans, fought not only with teeth, but with carefully planned maneuvers, written treaties, and alliances. Imagine lion kingdoms sending emissaries across savannas to negotiate peace or demand tribute. Imagine tigers mastering stealth, not only as hunters but as spies and diplomats, their solitary nature turning them into masters of information. What would humans do in this world? For most of history, we feared predators. They stalked our ancestors, tested our boundaries, and forced us to band together. If they were intelligent, humans might never have risen to dominance so easily. Villages could have faced not only rival tribes of humans, but also rival prides of lions, or federations of wolves, equally capable of strategy and warfare. In such a world, human expansion across continents might have been slowed, checked by predators who not only fought but negotiated, refusing to yield their lands. And yet, cooperation might also emerge. Wolves could align with humans, their bond deeper than mere domestication. In fact, our history with dogs shows us a glimpse of this. A partnership forged for mutual benefit. In an intelligent Earth, wolves might not have become pets, but allies, nations that chose to work alongside humans, sharing territory and hunting together. Lions, as rulers of the plains, might establish diplomatic relationships with human kingdoms, each recognizing the other as sovereign. Tigers and leopards might act as philosophers sought out by humans for their wisdom, respected hermits of the wild. Culture and predator civilizations would be marked by their unique senses and instincts. Wolves, with their heightened smell, might create art through scent, symphonies of fragrance that tell stories no human nose could ever perceive. Lions, with their vision of wide savannas, might create epic poems of the hunt, not celebrating blood but the balance of life, the respect between hunter and hunted. Tigers, masters of silence, might value meditation and the unseen, developing philosophies of emptiness and patience that humans could only partially understand. Religion, too, would be colored by their lives. Predators live at the edge of life and death. Every hunt is a gamble, every chase a test. Their gods might not be creators or rulers, but embodiments of cycles, the eternal dance of predator and prey, the balance of survival and sacrifice. A wolf prayer might thank the deer for its life, honoring it as part of the same great cycle. A lion ceremony might celebrate not the kill, but the moment before it, the tension, the inevitability of nature. A tiger meditation might honor the forest itself as a living spirit, inseparable from the self. The presence of predator philosophers would also force humans to rethink their role. We often imagine ourselves as the peak of intelligence, but in such a world we would share it with beings who see life through very different lenses. Their philosophies might challenge our own, reminding us that survival is not cruelty but necessity, that strength does not exclude wisdom, and that power carries responsibility. And perhaps the greatest lesson would come from their restraint. For predators, survival has always meant balance. Kill too much, and the prey disappears. Kill too little, and the hunter starves. Intelligent predators might build entire ethical systems around this balance, living reminders that power must be tempered by responsibility. Humans who often consume far beyond what we need could learn humility from them. In such a world, the image of a philosopher might not be a man in a robe, but a lion beneath a tree, reflecting on the nature of power. It might not be a monk in silence, but a tiger walking alone, teaching through its very presence. It might not be a scholar in a library, but a wolf pack debating under the moon, their howls echoing across valleys as arguments and agreements, law and poetry carried in sound. Predator civilizations remind us that intelligence is not limited to gentleness. It can emerge in strength, in hunting, in the act of taking life. But with reflection, that same strength can become wisdom. And if Earth had granted predators the same minds it granted us, the world might be filled not only with human cities, but with kingdoms of lions, federations of wolves, and solitary tiger sages, each carrying lessons about balance, power, and the meaning of life. Chapter 7. Plant and Fungus Partners. When we think of intelligence, our minds instinctively leap to animals, moving bodies, bright eyes, problem-solving brains. But the Earth's ecosystems have always been more than animals alone. Plants, fungi, and the hidden networks beneath our feet make life possible. If animals rose into full intelligence, it is hard to imagine them thriving without forging relationships, not just with each other, but with the green and silent world around them. Even now, plants and fungi already collaborate with animals in ways that border on astonishing. Bees pollinate flowers while feeding themselves. Fungi form mycorrhizal networks, invisible underground highways that connect trees, allowing them to share nutrients and even warning signals. Some birds cultivate plants, spreading seeds deliberately, and ants farm fungi in chambers deep beneath the soil. If these relationships grew under the guidance of animal intelligence, they could transform into deliberate partnerships, ecosystems consciously designed, alliances that go beyond instinct into civilization. Picture elephants, with their great size and memory, becoming gardeners of the savanna. Already, they knock down trees and open spaces that allow grasses to thrive, shaping the landscape simply by existing. With higher intelligence, they might begin to cultivate those spaces intentionally, planting certain trees, managing water sources, guiding herds of herbivores across the plains, not by accident, but by design. Their relationship with plants would not be one of consumption alone, but of stewardship. Elephant civilizations acting as gardeners of entire ecosystems. Dolphins and whales, intelligent rulers of the ocean, might turn to kelp forests and coral reefs as partners. Instead of simply swimming through them, they could learn to cultivate and protect them, creating underwater gardens of food and shelter. Imagine dolphin societies weaving kelp into intricate shapes, coral cities grown with deliberate care, algae harnessed not only as light, but as currency. Their civilizations could blur the line between nature and culture. Every structure alive, every city a collaboration between animal intelligence and plant growth. And then there are the insects. Ants already farm fungi, tending to them as carefully as human farmers tend wheat or rice. With intelligence, these partnerships could expand into entire agricultural empires. Ants might engineer underground forests of fungi, cultivated for food, medicine, and building material. Bees, beyond pollination, might learn to selectively breed flowers, cultivating entire fields not only for nectar, but for beauty and meaning. Their hives could glow with gardens of blossoms designed for their societies, living architecture built from petals and wax. Fungi themselves could become central to these new civilizations. Intelligent animals might recognize that mycelium networks function like natural internets, connecting plants and ecosystems and webs of communication. Instead of wires and signals, they would use roots and fungi, learning to speak through chemical messages. Wolves or crows might plant certain fungi near their territories, creating living boundaries or even shared communication networks between species. The crow could drop a seed in one place, and miles away, another crow might detect its growth through the fungal web, a natural internet spanning continents. The idea of animals as partners to plants and fungi reshapes our image of civilization itself. Human cities are built on separation from nature. We cut down forests, pave over soil, and tame landscapes into rigid forms. But animal civilizations might not draw that line so sharply. Intelligent species could grow their cities instead of building them. Dolphin towers of coral, bee gardens of blossoms, elephant groves of sacred trees, termite skyscrapers alive with fungus. Their civilizations would blur into ecosystems, indistinguishable from the natural world around them, sustained not by dominance but by collaboration. Philosophy in such societies might look very different from ours. Humans often place ourselves apart from nature, imagining ourselves as its masters. But intelligent animals more closely tied to plants and fungi might develop worldviews where individuality dissolves into networks. A wolf philosopher might argue that the forest itself is part of the pack. A bee thinker might see the hive and the field as inseparable halves of one body. An elephant sage might teach that to wound a tree is to wound the herd, that survival means care for the land. Religion, too, might reflect these connections. Instead of gods dwelling in distant heavens, intelligent animals might see divinity in the green and the hidden. Their sacred places could be groves, reefs, or fungal chambers. Their ceremonies might not separate the spiritual from the ecological, but merge them. Rituals of planting, growth, and harvest, celebrated not as agriculture, but as communion with the living earth. And what of humans in this shared world? Our history is marked by control over plants. We domesticated wheat, rice, maize, and countless others, shaping ecosystems to feed our civilizations. But if animals too had cultivated plants and fungi with intelligence, we would not have been alone in agriculture. Perhaps elephants would have guarded their groves fiercely, refusing human intrusion. Perhaps ants, with their fungal farms, would have claimed underground territories, forcing us to negotiate for space. Perhaps dolphins, weaving kelp forests, would have demanded treaties before allowing humans to fish their waters. Agriculture, instead of being a uniquely human invention, could have been a universal development, with each species shaping the earth in its own way. This raises questions of competition and cooperation. Would humans and animals fight over farmland, or would they share it? Would there be markets where elephants trade fruit with humans, where bees exchange honey for grains, where ants negotiate for space beneath fields? Or would the world fracture into ecological empires, each species guarding its agricultural treasures? Wars fought not only over land, but over the right to grow. But beyond conflict lies the possibility of unity. Imagine a council of species, each bringing its agricultural wisdom, humans with their fields, elephants with their groves, bees with their flowers, ants with their fungi, dolphins with their kelp. Together, they might design entire ecosystems, deliberately balancing food chains, climate, and biodiversity. The Earth itself would become not just a planet of life, but a planet of gardeners, each species tending in its own way. There is also the question of technology. Humans built tools from stone, wood, and metal. Intelligent animals in partnership with plants and fungi might have built technologies of growth. Living bridges woven from vines, houses grown from trees, communication systems carried through fungal networks, medicines cultivated from symbiotic plants. Where humans sought permanence through stone, they might seek permanence through regeneration. Their cities could breathe, grow, and repair themselves. And in that vision lies a lesson for us. Even now, as humans grapple with climate change and ecological collapse, we search for ways to live more harmoniously with nature. The thought experiment of intelligent animals reminds us that harmony is not a fantasy. It is a possibility we overlooked. Had evolution distributed intelligence more widely, our planet might already be shaped by civilizations that never divorced themselves from the land, but embraced it as part of themselves. In the end, the idea of plant and fungus partners is more than speculation. It is a mirror held up to our own choices. We see in animals the beginnings of what could have been. Bees dancing maps, ants farming fungi, elephants reshaping forests. They show us that the roots of civilization are not human alone, but written in the logic of life itself. And if intelligence had spread more widely, perhaps the earth would not be a place of separation between nature and culture, but a place where every city was also a forest, every hive also a garden, every civilization also an ecosystem, a planet where the line between the natural and the artificial never existed. Chapter 8: Technology without humans. When we imagine technology, we often think of human inventions, metal tools, machines, electricity, rockets. But technology in its essence is simply knowledge applied to shape the world. If animals had evolved intelligence equal to ours, they would not have copied our path. They would have created their own. Technologies shaped by their bodies, senses, and environments. Take dolphins. Living in the ocean, fire would be impossible. Instead, their technology would grow from sound. They already use sonar with incredible precision. With intelligence, dolphins could build acoustic devices, coral towers, tuned to amplify their clicks, chambers designed to record echoes as libraries of memory. Where humans invented books, dolphins might invent echo archives, storing knowledge in carefully carved spaces that sing back patterns of whistles. Their computers might be chambers of water tuned to harmonic frequencies, data stored in sound waves rather than ink or silicon. Whales, too, would develop ocean-wide systems. Their songs already carry for hundreds of kilometers. With higher intelligence, they could create deliberate communication networks, vast relays of sound across seas. The ocean would become a continuous web of voices, every clan connected by waves of music. Humans needed wires and satellites. Whales could use water itself as their medium. Octopuses, with their many arms and extraordinary dexterity, might become chemists and engineers of living materials. Instead of factories, they could grow tools, shells and corals reshaped, bioluminescent organisms bred to create light, adhesives refined to build shelters. Their machines might be alive, organisms engineered to serve specific tasks. To us, it would look like biology. To them, it would be technology. On land, elephants could become master builders. Their trunks combined strength with delicate precision, able to stack stones or weave branches. With intelligence, they might grow their cities instead of building them, guiding trees into structures, shaping rivers into water systems. Their technology would be ecological, rooted in balance, not extraction. Forests would become their architecture, groves their temples, landscapes their libraries. Crows and ravens, clever tool users even today, could craft technologies of flight. Their societies might design lightweight gliders, aerial platforms woven from branches and metals, scavenged from the ground. They could invent systems of symbols carved on cliffs, maps meant to be read from above. Their cities might be vertical, suspended across mountains, strung between canopies, visible only to those with wings, bees and ants. Already architects of complex societies would push collective invention further. Bees might refine their hives into waxwork towers, glowing with patterns of sunlight and pollen. Ants, with fungal farms, already in practice, could expand them into underground laboratories, cultivating organisms for food, medicine, even energy. Their machines would not be mechanical but biological, living structures bred for purpose, a blend of agriculture and technology. Predators would shape tools to their strengths. Wolves might invent long-distance communication systems, scent-based or vibrational, to unite their territories. Lions could build monuments of power, symbols of pride and memory. Tigers, solitary and stealthy, might refine camouflage into art, crafting living cloaks or habitats of illusion. Their technology would enhance hunting, strategy, and survival. The greatest divergence between human and animal technology lies in fire. For us, fire was everything: warmth, cooking, metalworking, engines. For animals, fire would be absent. Their innovations would follow other paths: sound, light, scent, biology. Energy might come from tides, mussels, or fungi, cultivated to release heat. Their progress would not rely on combustion, but on harmony with living systems. This difference would make their technologies almost invisible to us. We search for metal, engines, artifacts, but animal civilizations might grow their tools. A coral reef could be a library. A hive could be a power plant. A forest grove might be a city, carefully tended over centuries. To us, it would look like nature. To them, it would be infrastructure. And perhaps that is the most important lesson. Technology is not a single path, but many. It does not require fire or machines. It requires imagination and problem solving, shaped by the environment. If animals had evolved with intelligence, their technologies would be as diverse as life itself. Cities of coral, archives of sound, machines of fungus and light. A world where invention is alive, where civilization grows instead of builds, and where progress is measured not in steel, but in balance with the earth. Chapter 9. Animal cities. When we imagine a city, our minds fill with images of skyscrapers, markets, streets full of noise and movement. We think of lights glowing at night, of trade and culture bound together in a single dense space. But cities are not uniquely human ideas. They are a response to something deeper. The need for individuals to gather, to cooperate, to share resources, to create culture. If animals had evolved intelligence equal to ours, they too would have built cities. Yet their cities would not look like ours. They would be shaped by their bodies, their senses, and their relationship with the world. Imagine first the ocean. Dolphin and whale civilizations would transform coral reefs into sprawling underwater metropolises. Instead of steel and concrete, their cities would grow from living coral, carefully cultivated into arches, towers, and domes. Bioluminescent algae would light their streets in gentle waves of blue and green, pulsing in rhythm with their songs. A dolphin city might sound like music as much as it looked like a settlement. Clicks, whistles, and echoes bouncing through chambers. Libraries of sound hidden in resonant halls. Whale nations could build monumental song archives. Vast spaces designed to carry melodies across kilometers. Histories and laws stored in echoes rather than in writing. Their cities would not fight against the ocean but move with it. Alive, changing, as fluid as the tides themselves. Now picture the skies. Intelligent birds would not build cities of stone anchored to the ground. Their cities would be aerial, perched on cliffs, woven through canopies, or suspended across valleys. Imagine entire mountainsides strung with nests the size of houses connected by bridges of woven branches and vines. High above, aerial highways of gliders or flight formations would link different colonies. Communication would not be written, but sung. Entire neighborhoods echoing with symphonies of language. From below, a bird city might look like a living cathedral. Towers of wood, feathers, and scavenged materials, gleaming in sunlight. Its skyline shifting as flocks rose and descended. Their cities would be mobile, seasonal, alive with migration. Not fixed monuments, but living constellations in the air. Insects, with their collective power, might create the most alien cities of all. Already, ants and termites build structures that regulate temperature, airflow, and moisture. With full intelligence, those mounds would grow into megacities, skyscrapers of soil and stone, latticed with glowing fungal gardens and chemical conduits. Instead of electricity, they might power their cities with biology, breeding living organisms for light, warmth, and communication. A termite city might rise like a vast living sculpture, its surface patterned with intricate designs that also function as coded information, read by antennae and pheromone trails. To humans, such cities would appear more like landscapes than architecture, alive, sprawling, and incomprehensible in purpose. Bees, meanwhile, might build glowing towers of wax and resin, ornamented with fields of cultivated flowers, their entire city humming as one. For them, beauty and function would merge, each hexagonal chamber part of a greater harmony. On land, elephants could create cities of trees and rivers. Their immense strength and delicate trunks would allow them to guide forests into deliberate shapes, growing homes, halls, and groves that could last centuries. Water would be central, canals dug and maintained, rivers reshaped into arteries of life. Elephant cities might stretch across vast landscapes, not dense but sprawling, marked by groves of sacred trees planted in patterns visible only from above. These cities would be built not in defiance of nature, but in harmony with it, designed to last for generations without exhaustion of the land. Predators, too, would build, though their cities might look very different. Wolves, with their loyalty and social bonds, might create settlements shaped like rings, each circle representing the pack, families bound together in physical as well as social structure. Their plazas might be open fields for communal howling, councils held beneath the moon. Lions, in contrast, might construct monumental stone structures across savannas, symbols of pride and dominance, visible from miles away. Their cities might resemble temples of power, balanced between cooperation and hierarchy. Tigers, solitary by nature, might not build dense cities at all, but instead craft sanctuaries, sacred groves, hidden temples, places of solitude connected by networks of paths. Their cities could be distributed, more spiritual than practical, rooted in reflection rather than commerce. The coexistence of these animal cities with human ones would reshape the entire history of civilization. Imagine trade routes not only between human kingdoms, but between human villages and dolphin reefs, between elephant groves and crow mountain nests. The Silk Road might have been accompanied by the Song Road, a chain of whale song relays crossing oceans. Cities would not only be centers of human life, but hubs of interspecies exchange. Coral harvested by dolphins might find its way to human artisans. Bees might trade honey for grains. Elephants might share medicinal plants. Each city would represent not only its species, but its contribution to the global fabric of civilizations. Of course, cities also mean conflict. Borders between human farmland and bee flower fields could ignite disputes. Ant megacities could expand underground into human settlements, their growth unseen until too late. Bird colonies might claim skies above human fortresses, challenging our dominion. Wars in this world would not be fought only between human nations, but between species, each defending its own cities, its own vision of civilization. Yet just as often, alliances might form. Wolf packs allied with human tribes, elephant groves, partnering with human villages, dolphin reefs, trading knowledge with human sailors. The city would become a symbol not of one species, but of cooperation and competition woven together. Culture within animal cities would be as diverse as the species themselves. Dolphin festivals could involve massive synchronized displays of sound and movement, entire reefs lighting up with bioluminescence. Bird cities might host sky ballads, flocks painting patterns in the air to mark celebrations. Ant colonies could create landscapes of living art, tunnels arranged in fractal patterns, visible only from above. Elephant groves might echo with deep songs that carry across miles, communal memories shared in rhythm and sound. These would not be curiosities, but central features of civilizations, defining their identities. Philosophy would also flourish in such cities. Dolphin philosophers might debate the nature of sound and silence, seeing truth as resonance. Bird thinkers might explore freedom, migration, and belonging. Elephant sages could develop philosophies of memory and responsibility, arguing that cities must always serve the land. Ant intellectuals might dissolve the idea of individuality entirely, crafting systems of thought where the city itself is the true self. From above, Earth would look utterly transformed, not just human lights dotting the night, but glowing reefs beneath the waves, wax towers reflecting the moon, groves patterned like constellations, and aerial colonies strung across mountains. Civilization would not be singular, but plural, a kaleidoscope of cities, each uniquely adapted, each carrying the mark of its species. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson. Cities are not uniquely human achievements. They are patterns of cooperation, of culture, of survival. Life itself leans toward gathering, toward complexity, toward shaping environments into shared homes. If animals had risen alongside us, the Earth would not only host human cities, but an orchestra of civilizations, each singing its own story, each carving its own place in the tapestry of the planet. Our cities today in this vision would be just one voice among many. Chapter 10: Language and Communication. If intelligence is the spark of civilization, then language is its fire. Without words, without symbols, without ways to share thought, intelligence remains locked inside the mind. Humans rose to dominance because we found ways to speak, to write, to pass on memory. But in a world where animals also became intelligent, language would not be one shape, one sound, one system. It would be many, each species inventing forms of communication, as unique as their bodies and senses. Consider dolphins. Their world is sound. They navigate, hunt, and play using sonar, sending out clicks that return as echoes, forming pictures in the mind. Already, dolphins call each other by signature whistles, names in the truest sense, with higher intelligence. This ability could blossom into full sonar languages, layered with meaning. A single whistle might carry not only a name, but tone, mood, and spatial information. Entire conversations could unfold in seconds, faster than human speech, woven into melodies of clicks and whistles. Dolphins might draw images and sound, sending echoes that let another dolphin visualize an object without ever seeing it. Their literature could be oral symphonies, stories carried not in books but in waves of sound, transmitted across the sea. Whales, with their long haunting songs, would carry language even further. Their calls already travel across hundreds of kilometers, shifting in structure, year by year, as cultural trends spread. In an intelligent ocean, these songs might evolve into vast epics, histories, philosophies, even laws encoded in melody. A single whale song might last hours, reciting generations of memory, unlike human languages, bound by time and space. Whale communication could stretch across oceans, one chorus uniting entire civilizations. To us, it would sound like music. To them, it would be knowledge, flowing endlessly. On land, birds would craft languages from song. Even now, Different species of songbirds display regional dialects, accents that vary from one valley to another. With intelligence, these dialects could become full languages, rich in rhythm and tone. Imagine conversations as symphonies, where every note carries grammar, emotion, and meaning. Bird debates might sound like dueling choirs, their arguments unfolding in layered harmonies. Writing, for them, might not exist as marks on stone, but as woven patterns in nests. Colors arranged in sequences that carry meaning to the eye, as our alphabets do to the mind. Crows and ravens, with their intelligence and tool use, might combine vocal calls with visual symbols. They could carve shapes into wood, or scratch patterns into stone. Maps or messages designed to be read from the air. Their languages might blend sight and sound. A chorus of calls accompanied by markings that tell a fuller story. For them, communication would be multi-sensory, every call and symbol a part of a larger whole. Elephants, with their deep rumbles, would speak across distances humans cannot even perceive. Their infrasonic calls already travel for kilometers, carrying information about identity, status, and emotion. With greater intelligence, elephants could form vast communication networks, cities of sound linked through invisible vibrations in the ground. Their language might resemble baselines of the earth itself, felt through soil as much as heard in the air. Perhaps their histories would be written not in books, but in landscapes. Grooves carved into the earth, echoing with memory, passed down for generations. And what about insects? Bees already perform dances to tell hive mates where to find flowers, encoding direction, distance, and quality into movement. With intelligence, their dances could become full symbolic languages, three-dimensional performances that convey complex ideas. A bee parliament might debate policies not through speech, but through coordinated swarms. Dances that encode arguments into shifting shapes. Ants could use pheromones as writing, chemical trails that store information across entire landscapes. Their books would be fields of scent, read by antennae, invisible to us, but dense with meaning. Octopuses, with their color-changing skin, might develop visual languages unlike anything we know. Communication for them could be instantaneous, sentences flashing across their bodies in patterns of shifting light and texture. A conversation between octopuses might look like a dance of living paintings, ideas projected in waves of color, subtle as shadows or bright as fireworks. Their literature might not be written but displayed, murals of living skin, the stories performed rather than recorded. To humans, it would seem impossible to translate. To them, it would be natural. Art and language fused into one. Predators, too, would have their own ways. Wolves, bound by the pack, might speak through layered howls. Even now, the chorus of howls can carry identity, size, and mood. With intelligence, howling could evolve into a full vocal system, complex enough to carry law and poetry. Lions, with their roars, might use volume and rhythm to convey meaning across the plains, their speeches echoing like declarations. Tigers, solitary and stealthy, could rely on scent, leaving chemical messages on trees and rocks. A written language of pheromones, invisible but rich with meaning. The diversity of these languages would make interspecies communication both rich and difficult. Imagine a council where dolphins whistle, elephants rumble, bees dance, and birds sing, each trying to be understood. Translators would be essential. Individuals or technologies capable of bridging senses, turning scent into sound, dance into words, color into story. Entire professions might emerge dedicated to translation, ensuring peace and cooperation between species. Miscommunication could spark wars. Understanding could build alliances. The politics of Earth would hinge not just on resources, but on language itself. Culture would bloom from this diversity. Human literature would sit beside whale epics, dolphin symphonies, bird choirs, elephant rumbles, octopus murals. A library in this world would not be shelves of books, but an interspecies archive. recordings of sound, samples of scent, living artworks of light and motion. Every civilization would contribute its voice, no single species holding the monopoly on expression. Philosophy, too, would be transformed. Humans often imagine thought as internal dialogue, words in the mind. But octopuses might think in images of color, bees might think in dance, elephants might think in vibrations, whales in melodies. The very structure of intelligence would differ, reminding us that thought is not bound to words, but can be built from any system of symbols. Truth itself might look different depending on the species. For humans, it is written; for whales, it is sung; for bees, it is danced; for octopuses, it is painted on skin. And what of religion in such a world? Sacred texts would not only be books, but performances, songs, vibrations, scents. A whale hymn might be considered scripture, its notes passed unchanged for centuries. A bee ritual dance might carry divine meaning, retold in endless cycles. An elephant's sacred grove might be etched with rumbles, vibrations stored in stone. Language, in all its forms, would be the bridge to the divine. The earth, filled with intelligent species, would become a symphony of communication. Every forest, every reef, every sky would hum with meaning. At night, whale songs would echo beneath the stars, while birds sang across valleys, elephants rumbled across plains, and octopuses shimmered in the depths. To live on such a planet would be to live inside an orchestra, a living chorus of thought and expression. And perhaps the deepest lesson is this: language is not one thing, but many. We think words make us unique, but they are only one thread in the vast fabric of possible communication. If animals had risen alongside us, the earth would not speak in one tongue, but in 1,000. Each different, each beautiful, each alive. Chapter 11. Conflict and cooperation. When intelligence spreads across species, the question is not just how they would think, but how they would live together. Cooperation has always been the foundation of survival, even among humans, but so has conflict. The tension between the two has shaped history, and in a world where dolphins, elephants, wolves, ants, birds, and countless others held equal intelligence, that tension would only grow deeper. Imagine the oceans first. Dolphins and whales build civilizations of sound and coral. Humans sail into their territories with ships and nets. What happens next in our world? We hunted whales for oil, filling oceans with blood. In theirs, a whale nation might rise to resist. Fleets of humans meeting councils of dolphins. Treaties might be forged, dividing seas into shared waters and sovereign territories. Or wars could erupt beneath the waves, fought not with cannon fire alone, but with strategies born of sonar, ambush, and alliance. On land, imagine human farmers clearing forests to grow wheat, only to find themselves negotiating not with nature, but with elephants who manage groves, or with crow colonies that have cultivated entire mountain ranges as their own. How would property exist when species see land differently? To an elephant, a forest is not property, it is family. To a bee, a field of flowers is not territory, it is lifeblood. To a human, it is farmland. In such a world, every square of earth would be contested, not only among nations of humans, but across species themselves. Conflict would be inevitable. Wolves might raid human herds, not as predators, but as rival nations taking resources. Lions might demand tribute from humans entering their plains. Ant megacities might tunnel beneath villages, undermining human settlements without intent, but with consequences all the same. Even peaceful species would clash. Dolphins could drive fishermen away. Bees could swarm fields to protect flowers. Crops humans claim might already belong to insect kingdoms. Yet cooperation would be just as possible. In fact, it might become the only way forward. Humans and wolves could forge alliances as equals, much deeper than domestication ever gave us. Wolves might become partners in defense, guards of human borders in exchange for food and respect. Elephant groves could join human villages, trading medicinal plants and wisdom about ecosystems. Dolphins might teach sailors sonar mapping, guiding them through dangerous waters in exchange for protection of reefs. The question becomes not whether conflict or cooperation dominates, but how societies learn to balance both. Our own history is filled with wars, but also with treaties, federations, the alliances, and Earth of many intelligent species would mirror this. Cycles of rivalry and unity, suspicion and trust. Politics would be radically transformed. A council of nations would not just mean human states sitting at tables. It would mean dolphins speaking in whistles, elephants rumbling through the floor, bees dancing in cymbals, birds singing across the chamber. Translation itself would become a political act. One mistake enough to turn alliance into hostility. Entire professions would emerge around interspecies diplomacy. Their role would be not only to carry words, but to interpret cultures. For a wolf pack, silence before a hunt might be sacred. For humans, it might look like hesitation. For a bee swarm, coordinated movement could be debate. For us, it might seem like chaos. Trade, too, would reshape the planet. Humans might rely on bees for pollination services, exchanging grain for honey. Ants might farm fungi with incredible efficiency, trading surplus for access to human metals or tools. Dolphins could share fish from managed reefs in return for human goods. Elephant groves could supply rare plants, while birds trade aerial maps of migratory routes. Each species would bring something essential, their unique biology turning into economic power. But trade would not erase conflict. Just as in human history, envy, greed, and misunderstanding could ignite disputes. Imagine a famine year. Humans blame bees for withholding pollination. Bees blame humans for cutting flowers. Elephants accuse humans of damming rivers, while humans accuse elephants of trampling crops. Each side convinced of its own truth, each truth shaped by survival. And yet, cooperation might emerge strongest in times of crisis. Imagine a drought, elephants guiding humans to hidden water, humans helping bees carry their hives to safer grounds, birds leading wolves and humans alike toward migrating herds. In disaster, survival could depend on unity, the recognition that intelligence is not enough, but that life itself requires cooperation. Culture would reflect this constant tension. Human stories might tell of heroic alliances with dolphins, or tragic wars with ants. Whale epics could sing of centuries-long conflicts with human fleets, ending in treaties that bind oceans together. Elephant chants might recount betrayals and reconciliations, reminding all species that peace is fragile but precious. Religion, too, might emphasize balance. Predators could develop creeds about restraint, honoring prey as sacred, taking only what is necessary. Herbivores might create rituals of gratitude toward predators, recognizing that even death has meaning in the cycle. Shared ceremonies could emerge, interspecies rituals where humans, birds, wolves, and elephants honor the earth as their common ground. Philosophy in such a world would be shaped by constant negotiation. Human thinkers might ask, is justice the same for every species? Should wolves be judged for hunting when it is their nature? Should humans be judged for farming when it changes landscapes? Elephant sages might argue that morality must include the land itself, not just the living. Whale philosophers might insist that truth is relative to the medium, sung for them, written for us, danced for bees. Would peace ever be permanent? Perhaps not. Just as in our world, peace would be a process, fragile, hard-earned, and always under threat. But the presence of many intelligences would demand it. In a single-species world, humans can dominate. In a multi-species world, dominance would be impossible. The only true survival would be shared survival at night. The earth of this vision would reflect that paradox. Whale songs carrying across oceans like treaties in melody, bee dances shifting across meadows like arguments in motion. elephant rumbles vibrating through the ground, crows marking treaties on stone, wolves howling both warnings and promises under the moon, conflict and cooperation woven together, the same as they have always been, only now multiplied across species. And maybe that is the greatest lesson. Intelligence does not erase conflict. It does not guarantee peace, but it opens the possibility of choice, of reflection, of restraint. In a world where animals became intelligent too, survival would not be about strength alone. It would be about the endless balance between rivalry and unity, a balance that defines civilization itself. Chapter 12. Redefining food chains. Predators hunt, prey run, plants grow. That has been the rhythm of life on Earth for hundreds of millions of years. But what if all the major animals had minds equal to ours? What happens to the food chain when both predator and prey can reason, imagine, and argue? The very basis of survival would need to be rewritten. Consider lions on the savannah in our world. They chase zebras and antelope. Their survival depends on the hunt. But if zebras and antelope were intelligent too, the simple act of predation would carry new weight. A lion no longer kills instinctively. It kills a being capable of thought, of family, of culture. The prey would no longer be silent. They would protest, negotiate, demand alternatives. The old balance of nature would be shattered. Some predator civilizations might cling to the hunt. They could frame it as sacred, ritualized. A zebra might accept the role of prey in a ceremony, believing its sacrifice sustains the cycle. Predators might build religions around the balance of life and death. Hunts could be rare and symbolic, honoring prey rather than treating it as mere food. In such societies, predation would not vanish, but transform. Other species might search for alternatives. Wolves could shift toward agriculture, growing fungi or raising other animals. Dolphins might cultivate fish through controlled reefs, not by chasing them, but by managing their populations. Lions might turn to humans, or elephants, for agreements, trading protection or services in exchange for food supplies. The invention of farming by predators would mark a turning point, the replacement of instinct with negotiation. Prey species would face their own dilemmas. Gazelles and deer could no longer live only in fear. They would need strategies to coexist with predators. Would they agree to managed hunting? Would they form alliances, offering resources in exchange for peace? Perhaps intelligent herbivores would become diplomats of survival, crafting treaties where predators are allowed limited hunts. Balanced by shared agriculture, conflicts would be inevitable. Imagine wolves demanding tribute of livestock from human villages, insisting it is their right. As hunters, humans might resist, claiming ownership of herds. Wolves would see this as theft from the natural order. Lions could raid elephant groves, taking food by force. Ant colonies might refuse predators entirely, fortifying their fungal farms with armies. Wars could emerge not over land or borders, but over the right to eat. Technology would reshape the question. Ants could invent fungal biofarms large enough to feed both themselves and predators. Dolphins might engineer ocean systems that allow fish to reproduce faster, sustaining both prey and hunters. Humans could offer domesticated animals, grown specifically to satisfy predator societies. Ethical debates would rage. Is it acceptable to breed life for consumption if all beings are intelligent? Or is it cruelty masked as compromise? Culture would shift around the question of food. Predator art might glorify the hunt as memory. Even after it fades from practice, prey cultures could celebrate endurance, turning survival into philosophy. Shared festivals could emerge, where predator and prey alike honor the cycle with symbolic rituals rather than real bloodshed. The old roles of hunter and hunted might transform into roles of ritual, memory, and shared culture. Religion would offer guidance. Predators might revere deities of restraint, celebrating the strength to withhold violence. Herbivores might honor gods of protection, guardians of herds. Some faiths could merge, creating creeds that worship the cycle itself, a recognition that life feeds on life. but that intelligence demands responsibility. Philosophy would deepen these questions. Do predators have the right to kill if they can reason otherwise? Do herbivores have the duty to share if they rely on predators for balance? What is justice in a food chain of thinkers? Some might argue that intelligence abolishes the chain altogether. Others might insist that balance demands sacrifice, even when painful. In practice, Earth might become a place of constant negotiation. Fields patrolled by gazelle councils, guarded against predators who must request permission to hunt. Oceans divided into zones, fish-rich territories shared between dolphins and sharks. Wolves running herds with humans, managing them as joint property. Every meal would be political, every act of eating tied to culture and law. The most profound change would be ethical awareness. In our world, animals eat without guilt. In theirs, every predator would know the weight of taking a life. Some might live with pride in fulfilling the cycle, others with guilt, still others with solutions that avoid killing entirely. Food itself would no longer be just sustenance, but philosophy, and maybe that is the heart of it. The food chain is not broken by intelligence, but redefined. Predators and prey would still exist, but their roles would shift into agreements, rituals, compromises. Instead of endless fear, there would be negotiation. Instead of blind instinct, there would be choice. The cycle of life would not vanish, but it would gain meaning, shaped not only by survival, but by morality. Chapter 13. The role of humans. In every version of this thought experiment, one question keeps rising. If Earth's animals became intelligent too, where would humans stand? Would we still dominate as we do now? Or would we be just another species among many? The answer depends not only on our strengths, but on how other intelligences would shape the planet alongside us. Humans rose because we mastered cooperation, language, and tools. But if dolphins, elephants, crows, ants, and predators had done the same, our uniqueness would vanish. We would not be special. We would be one voice in a chorus. At first, this might seem threatening. Our history is marked by conquest, by the drive to dominate land and resources in a multi-intelligent Earth. That drive would have been checked at every step. As humans expanded across continents, we would meet rivals not of our own kind, but of entirely different species. Imagine ancient tribes settling a river valley, only to discover elephants had already cultivated groves there, or sailors setting out to sea, only to be confronted by dolphin nations, demanding treaties before allowing passage. The story of humanity would no longer be a tale of easy dominance, but of negotiation from the very beginning. Would humans still develop agriculture as we did? Possibly, but we might not hold a monopoly. Ants could expand their fungal farms into empires beneath our feet. Bees could demand ownership of fields. Elephants might grow forests deliberately. The first farmers of Earth might not have been human at all. Instead, agriculture could have emerged simultaneously across species, each cultivating in different ways. Humans would have had to adapt, learning to trade with other civilizations, or fighting them for space. Technology too would be contested. Humans invented fire and metalwork, but dolphins, birds, and octopuses could have followed different paths. A human tribe crafting bronze weapons might find themselves outmatched by octopuses, engineering bioluminescent communication systems, or by ants building fungal structures stronger than stone. The myth of human superiority would be impossible. Our tools would be advanced, yes, but so would theirs. Civilization would not belong to us alone. Language would become a barrier and a bridge. Humans speak with voices, write with symbols, but other species would sing, dance, flash color, or rumble through the ground. Diplomacy between species would require translation. Entire groups of humans dedicating their lives to interpreting bee dances or elephant vibrations. Miscommunication could lead to wars. Cooperation could build alliances. Human survival would depend not only on our own languages, but on our ability to listen to others. And yet, humans have one advantage that might still matter: adaptability We are generalists, able to live in deserts, forests, tundra, and cities. Dolphins are bound to the sea, elephants to the land, bees to flowers, ants to soil. Our flexibility could still make us a central species, not rulers but connectors, bridging different civilizations. Imagine humans as mediators, traders who walk between elephant groves and bee fields, interpreters who sail between dolphin reefs and human ports, philosophers who sit with wolves under the moon to discuss balance. Conflict would shape our role as much as cooperation. There is no denying that humans might still attempt domination. Our tendency to expand endlessly might clash with dolphin territorial seas, with bee-guarded flower fields, with wolf packs defending forests. Wars might break out again and again. But unlike in our world, we would not always win. Ants could overwhelm with sheer numbers. Dolphins could strike ships from below. Elephants could crush armies with their size. In this earth, human conquest would be humbled. Our power would not vanish, but it would no longer be absolute. Culturally, humans might gain as much as we lose. Exposure to other intelligences would shape our art, philosophy, and religion. Imagine human poets inspired by whale songs, painters imitating octopus displays of color, architects learning from termite towers. Our greatest achievements might not come from within, but from exchange. Humanity would be richer, not rulers of the world, but participants in a world of many voices. Philosophy would transform completely. Much of human thought has centered on the human condition, on questions like, what makes us special? Or what is the purpose of man? In a multi-intelligent earth, those questions would vanish. The focus would be on coexistence. A philosopher in Athens might not debate only with other men, but with bird song echoing from the trees, with elephants rumbling from the plains. Philosophy would not be anthropocentric. It would be planetary. Religion, too, would change. Human faiths often place us at the center, chosen by gods, stewards of the earth. But if we were only one of many intelligent species, how could such beliefs survive? Faiths would have to expand, to include not just humans, but dolphins, wolves, elephants, bees, all of them children of creation, all of them voices in the divine chorus. Some religions might resist, clinging to human supremacy. Others might embrace the unity of life, forming shared creeds that worship the earth itself as the common home of all minds. Would humans eventually lose our role, or would we remain leaders among equals? The truth is likely in between. Our adaptability, curiosity, and versatility would still give us an edge, but we would also face checks on our ambition. Never again could humans expand without resistance. Every step would require dialogue, compromise, or confrontation. In many ways, this world could make us better. Our arrogance would be tempered, our empathy expanded. To share a planet with other intelligent species would force us to see ourselves differently. Not as rulers, but as neighbors. The role of humans would not be to dominate, but to connect, to mediate, to learn. And perhaps that is the most important lesson. Intelligence does not guarantee supremacy. It guarantees responsibility. In a world where animals were our equals, the role of humans would not be to stand above them, but beside them. Chapter 14. A shared earth. If all animals were intelligent, if dolphins, elephants, wolves, ants, crows, and countless others stood beside us as thinking beings, the earth itself would be unrecognizable. It would not be a human planet, not an animal planet, but a shared earth, and the rules of life, of survival, of civilization would be rewritten. What would such a shared world look like? The first thing to imagine is governance. In our history, humans built nations, borders, laws. We formed alliances and empires, broke them, and built them again. But in a multi-intelligent earth, governance would not belong to one species. It would need to be interspecies. Picture a great council, not of kings and presidents alone, but of matriarch elephants, dolphin philosophers, raven councils, and ant colonies, each bringing their voice, their language, their needs. Translation would be a constant challenge, not just of words, but of meaning. Peas might dance their arguments, whales might sing them, humans might write them down. A decision could take months, even years, as every species struggled to understand the others. But that slowness could also bring wisdom, forcing patience, forcing compromise. Shared governance would transform conflict. Wars might still happen, but they would be broader, stranger. A war might not be between two human nations, but between a coalition of elephants and humans against a federation of wolves and ants. Treaties would be written in many forms, sung in whale melody, carved into stone by humans, encoded in pheromones by ants. Every alliance fragile, every peace hard-earned. Economy too would be unrecognizable. Today, humans dominate trade, but in this shared earth, every species would bring resources. Dolphins could manage fisheries, controlling stocks with careful knowledge of oceans. Bees would hold enormous power, pollinating crops, but demanding respect and trade in return. Elephants might control forests, harvesting rare plants and guiding ecosystems. Ants could farm fungi at vast scales, producing food or medicine to exchange with others. Humans would trade metals, fire-based technologies, and machines. The world market would not be human-centered, but interspecies trade would create dependencies. Humans could not eat without bees. Bees might not survive without human grains. Dolphins might protect fish supplies for all, but require treaties to safeguard coral cities. Every species would hold leverage, making cooperation not optional but necessary. Culture would explode in diversity, each species creating, performing, and sharing in ways no single species could imagine. Imagine a festival where birds perform sky ballads, weaving patterns in the air, while whales sing deep songs beneath the waves, where humans add instruments. Ants create living fractals of movement, and elephants drum the ground with rhythms that travel for miles. A festival of Earth, not for one species, but for all. Art would not be confined to human senses. Bees could create fields of flowers arranged as living paintings, visible in ultraviolet patterns humans cannot see. Octopuses could paint water with color, their shifting skins telling stories. Crows might carve great symbols into cliffs, visible only from above. Elephants could shape forests into patterns, groves that sing with memory. Humans would stand among them, humbled and inspired. Philosophy in such a world would be planetary. Humans would no longer ask, "What is man?" They would ask, "What is intelligence? What is coexistence?" Dolphins might define truth as resonance, elephants as memory, wolves as loyalty, ants as unity, birds as freedom. To argue would not just be to argue across cultures, but across species, stretching the very meaning of reason. Religion too would shift. Many faiths today place humans at the center, chosen by gods or destined for dominion. In a shared earth, that idea would crumble. Faiths would need to grow. To imagine a divine that included all intelligences. A bee might see the hive as sacred. A wolf might worship the pack. A whale might worship sound. Humans might begin to see the divine not as a reflection of themselves, but as a chorus of life. The sacred would not belong to one species, but to the planet itself. Law would evolve beyond imagination. In our world, laws govern people, property, and nations. In theirs, laws would govern ecosystems. Who owns a river if elephants drink from it? Dolphins swim in it. Humans dam it, and ants tunnel along its banks. Who controls a forest? The elephants who plant it, the humans who harvest it, or the birds who nest in it. Every law would be a negotiation, every right contested. Justice would be shared, not granted by one authority but balanced between many. Education would expand beyond human schools. Imagine children learning alongside wolf cubs, bee swarms, and dolphin calves. A classroom where human teachers explain mathematics, while dolphins demonstrate sonar mapping. Bees dance geometry, and elephants tell history through song. Knowledge would not be limited to human perspective, but blended, multisensory, multi-species, and what of identity? Humans today define themselves in contrast to animals. We are rational. They are instinctive. We are advanced. They are primitive. But in a shared earth, that boundary would dissolve. We would no longer say human versus animal, but we, a collective of species bound by intelligence. The differences would remain, but the hierarchy would fade. Still, the challenges would be immense. Not all species would agree. Predators might resist laws that restrict hunting. Prey might refuse compromises that endanger survival. Ant colonies might expand relentlessly underground, ignoring human cities above. Bees might refuse to pollinate crops of species they distrust. Humans might push too hard for expansion, ignoring treaties. Balance would always be fragile, yet perhaps that fragility is the point. A shared Earth would not be easy. It would be difficult, slow, full of conflict, but it would also be richer, wiser, more balanced. Every decision would require empathy, patience, and humility. No species could dominate without consequence. No voice could be silenced without imbalance. At night, such a world would look like an orchestra of civilizations, lights glowing from human cities, bioluminescent coral shining from dolphin reefs, fires flickering from elephant groves, ultraviolet fields blooming from bee gardens, bird colonies singing across mountains, whale songs echoing under stars. A shared Earth would not be perfect, but it would be alive in ways our world has never been. Not ruled by one species, but guided by many. Not divided into humans and animals, but united as intelligences. And maybe, in that vision, we see not only what could have been, but what still could guide us. A reminder that intelligence is not power alone. It is responsibility. Chapter 15. The Future of Evolution. If animals across Earth became intelligent, the story would not end with cities, laws, and treaties. Evolution never stops. It is not a moment frozen in time, but a river that flows endlessly. In a world of many intelligences, the question becomes not just how these species coexist now, but how they would continue to change. For humans, evolution shaped our brains at great cost. Larger heads meant dangerous births. Larger brains demanded more energy, requiring new diets, longer childhoods, and stronger social bonds. If dolphins, elephants, ants, birds, and wolves followed similar paths, how might their bodies, minds, and societies evolve further in the future? Take dolphins. Their sonar already gives them a kind of perception humans cannot match. Over millennia, with intelligence driving them, sonar could become even more refined. Perhaps they would learn to project complex hologram-like sound images, sharing ideas visually through echo. The dolphin brain might evolve to process these images instantly, creating thought forms that are half picture, half sound. Their bodies could change too, flippers becoming more flexible for manipulation, or symbiosis with engineered corals, giving them physical environments that evolve alongside them. Dolphin evolution would merge biology and culture until the two were inseparable. Whales might evolve toward memory, already capable of passing songs across generations. Intelligent whales could become the great archivists of the oceans, their brains growing not just larger, but specialized for storing vast histories. Ancestry not in books, but in neural networks passed from parent to child. Entire civilizations could survive through memory alone. They might live even longer lives, their longevity making them custodians of continuity. To evolve in this way would be to become the living libraries of Earth. Birds would adapt differently. Their intelligence would be shaped by the sky. Over time, their wings might adapt for carrying objects, their beaks becoming more precise for crafting. Songbirds could evolve increasingly complex vocal cords, expanding their range until one bird voice carries hundreds of tones and meanings. In parallel, Their brains might become masters of pattern recognition, seeing geometry and structure in ways humans cannot. Bird evolution could lead to philosophers of the sky, mathematicians of migration, and artists whose very flight patterns become evolving works of art. Elephants, with their strength and long memories, might evolve toward stewardship, already tied deeply to landscapes. They could develop even more advanced trunks, capable of delicate manipulation. Their societies might guide forests deliberately, evolving groves into ecosystems shaped across centuries. Their brains might adapt toward long-term planning, becoming not just historians of the land, but architects of futures. To evolve in this way would make elephants true guardians, shaping Earth as gardeners on a planetary scale. Ants and bees would evolve along collective lines. Intelligence for them is not individual, but shared over time. Their colonies might develop increasingly sophisticated forms of distributed thought. Ants could evolve to share information instantly across thousands of members, the hive mind growing more complex than any single brain. Bees might refine dances into symbolic languages rich enough to pass abstract thought. Evolution could push them into superorganisms, where individuality is minimal, but civilization is vast. For us, it would look alien, but for them, it would be the natural direction of their species. Predators like wolves, lions, and tigers might evolve differently again. Their intelligence would balance instinct with morality. Wolves could evolve enhanced social intelligence, reading emotions and strategies across packs, and even across species. Lions might evolve structures of power and restraint, their brains specializing in law and leadership. Tigers, solitary, might evolve inner cognition, their minds turning toward philosophy, introspection, and a spiritual sense of connection to forests. Their evolution could make them sages rather than rulers. But evolution would not be only about each species alone. It would also be about convergence. As species lived side by side, their intelligences might influence one another. Humans and wolves might co-evolve, our partnership deepening until our societies blend. Elephants and humans might share agriculture, developing hybrid ecosystems. Dolphins and whales might merge into a cultural supernetwork of sound. Ants might domesticate humans in return, guiding us to build for them, as we once domesticated dogs. Biological evolution might even merge with cultural and technological evolution. As species shaped tools, tools would shape them back. Elephants guiding trees into houses might eventually breed forests that evolve alongside them. Bees breeding flowers for their hives might direct the evolution of plants. Octopuses engineering bioluminescent organisms might one day create species entirely dependent on them. Technology would not stand apart from biology. It would fold into evolution itself. Conflicts would arise from this too. A world of many intelligences might mean competition not only for resources but for evolutionary paths. Some species might accelerate their evolution with breeding, cultivation, or even biological engineering. Others might resist, preferring tradition. The future of Earth would not be one story but many. Lines diverging, converging, reshaping one another. And what of humans in this future? We would not stand still either. Living among other intelligent species could change us. Our brains might evolve greater empathy, forced to understand perspectives beyond our own. Our societies might evolve patience, learning to negotiate across not just cultures but senses, sound, scent, vibration, color. We might even evolve biologically in response. Our lungs adapting to underwater life with dolphins. Our perception stretching to notice ultraviolet with birds. Evolution could blur the boundary between species. Philosophy in this future would wrestle with profound questions. Should species merge their paths or remain distinct? Is individuality sacred or is collective intelligence superior? What does progress mean when it is no longer measured in human terms alone? Religion might turn planetary. If all species evolve together, faith might grow around Earth itself as the divine. not gods of sky or sea, but the planet as a whole, evolving with its children. Each species might add its vision, whales seeing Earth as memory, birds as freedom, ants as unity, elephants as stewardship, humans as adaptability. The ultimate trajectory of evolution in such a world might be toward integration, not the dominance of one, but the blending of many, a planet where intelligence itself evolves not as separate sparks, but as a network, a web. The Earth of this future would not be silent. It would sing in many voices, think in many ways, and evolve in many directions. It would be alive not just with life, but with civilizations, each adapting, each transforming, each carrying the great experiment of evolution forward. And perhaps that is the greatest truth. Intelligence is not the end of evolution. It is only its beginning. Chapter 16. The Rise of a New Civilization. If animals across Earth had risen into intelligence alongside us, it would not stop with separate cities, separate laws, and endless negotiations. Over time, something larger would emerge, something greater than the sum of its parts. A shared Earth would give birth to a shared civilization. At first, each species would cling to its own ways, dolphins shaping coral metropolises beneath the sea, elephants guiding forests into living groves, ants building fungal towers, birds weaving aerial colonies, wolves forming federations of packs, humans spreading their stone and fire, each world distinct, each proud of its uniqueness, but survival pushes toward cooperation. Trade would bind them, bees pollinating crops in exchange for grains, dolphins managing fisheries for human tools, elephants offering medicines of the forest for whale histories sung across oceans, ants exchanging fungal harvests for human metals. Slowly, necessity would become habit, habit would become tradition, and tradition would grow into something new. The great councils of Earth would mark the turning point. At first, they would be chaotic, a chamber filled with voices, human words, dolphin whistles, elephant rumbles, bee dances, octopus color patterns. Translation would falter, misunderstanding would spark anger, but with time, systems would grow. Universal translators built not from machines alone, but from collaboration, dolphins teaching resonance, the bees teaching pattern, humans coding symbols, birds weaving tones into shared languages. Imagine the first treaty of Earth, signed not in one script, but in many, whale songs recorded as law, bee dances encoded as movement, elephant rumbles pressed into stone, human words carved in alphabets, every voice equal, every form respected, a treaty not of dominance, but of recognition. From there, the rise of shared civilization would accelerate. Cities would no longer belong to one species. Imagine a coastal metropolis where humans build ports, dolphins shape underwater districts, birds construct aerial nests, and elephants cultivate groves inland. One city, many layers, interconnected like organs of a body. Inland, human villages might merge with elephant groves, children growing alongside calves, learning history from rumbling songs as well as written books. Above, ravens would carve maps into cliffs, while humans farmed valleys below. In oceans, dolphin towers of coral would connect to human harbors, goods passing between sea and land with ease. Culture would explode with fusion. Festivals uniting species would become the soul of civilization. Imagine a celebration where whales sing in deep harmonies, dolphins add sonar melodies, birds weave aerial ballads, elephants drum the earth, and humans bring instruments of wood and metal, a symphony of the planet itself. Art would no longer belong to one sense, but to all. Color, sound, vibration, scent. Philosophy would also evolve. Human thinkers debating with dolphin philosophers, whale historians with elephant sages, ants presenting arguments of unity, birds offering perspectives of freedom, wolves reflecting on loyalty. The questions would change. Instead of what is man, would be what is intelligence? What is justice across species? What is the meaning of coexistence? Religion would transform in kind. Faiths no longer centered on one species would expand to embrace all. Sacred texts would be multiformed. Hymns sung in oceans, dances performed in hives, chants rumbling through forests, stories carved by humans into stone. The divine would not be imagined in human form, but in the image of earth itself, a chorus of voices, and then governance would unify. At first, councils would manage disputes, but with time, these councils would grow into something like global government. Representatives not only of nations, but of species. Humans sitting beside elephants, bees beside wolves, dolphins beside ravens. The earth itself would gain its first true parliament. Law would become universal. A forest could not be cut without the consent of those who lived within it. Oceans could not be fished without treaties between dolphins and humans. Rivers could not be dammed without elephants and ants weighing in. The rights of species would be enshrined. The right of bees to flowers, the right of whales to oceans, the right of wolves to roam, the right of humans to grow. Technology too would merge. Humans would bring fire, metals, machines, dolphins and whales would bring resonance. Birds would bring aerial mapping, elephants, ecological engineering, ants biofarms, bees sunlight, octopuses chemistry. Slowly, inventions would become hybrids, machines alive with biology, cities glowing with coral and glass, networks built of sound and vibration. The shared civilization would not erase conflict. Rivalries would remain, prey species arguing with predators, ant colonies competing with human cities, dolphins and humans contesting the seas. But the framework would change. Wars would not be the end, but the failure of diplomacy. The true goal of civilization would be to keep the balance. Over centuries, cultures would intermix. Children of different species might be raised together, not as exceptions, but as the norm. A human child might grow with a wolf pack, learning loyalty and strategy. A dolphin calf might study mathematics with humans. A raven chick might learn philosophy alongside human students. Education would become interspecies. The earth itself would begin to look different. From the sky, one could see glowing reefs alive with dolphin architecture, bee gardens stretching in ultraviolet patterns, elephant groves marking landscapes, human cities with bird towers above them, ant megacities beneath. It would be a planet alive not only with life, but with civilization. And what of identity in such a world? Humans today define themselves against animals. We are rational. They are instinctive. We are advanced. They are primitive. In a shared earth, that division dissolves. Identity would no longer be species alone. It would be role, a dolphin poet, an elephant historian, a human engineer, a bee philosopher, all part of one greater network. The rise of this civilization would be slow, difficult, full of conflict, but it would be richer, it would be wiser, it would be the first time in history that Earth truly belonged not to one species but to all. And perhaps that is the vision we take with us, that intelligence is not power alone, but the possibility of unity, that life is not competition alone, but cooperation, that civilization does not have to mean one voice, silencing the rest, but many voices rising together. The shared earth would be imperfect, full of disagreements and tensions, but it would also be alive with a civilization greater than any one species could build, a world where the future is not human, not animal, but shared.